Today we're going to learn about the U.S. measurement system, which is a counterpart to the metric system used in the United States. And to understand the U.S. measurement system, we will learn how to measure the length of something using a ruler marked in inches. This seems like something that we already know how to do from middle school or grade school, but actually it's a little more complicated than you might think, and we're going to take a look at it today. But first, I want to show you a picture of an alpaca. Okay, this is a ruler, a typical ruler. It has 12 inches, and each inch is divided into smaller divisions. The divisions are usually in 1/16 of an inch increments, and that's what we have here. The largest mark on the ruler is the inch level, so this would be 1 inch. And by largest mark, I mean the marks here that are the longest. You can see there's one at 1 and 2 and 3, etc. And the US system differs in that we don't go in units of 10, rather we divide a unit in half to get the next smaller unit. For example, here we divide the inch in half to get the next marker, and we make it slightly shorter than the original one at the 1 inch mark. So this larger one in the center will be the 1/2. And we divide again. Half of a half is a quarter, so if this is 1/2, this is 0, we would have the quarter mark here, and halfway between 1/2 and 1 is 3/4, and we would have the 3/4 mark here. This is slightly shorter, and after that we continue the process until we divide once again, and half of a quarter is 1/8, and now we get the 1/8 marks, and they're even shorter in length, and this allows us to identify it. It's the 1, 2, 3, it's the fourth longest one, and with some practice you'll be able to identify the eighths very quickly. And finally we divide it up into 16ths. If we go further than this, then the marks start to merge together and you really can't see between them. So we have 1/16 here, 2/16 here, or 1/8, 3/16 right here, 4/16 here, which is 1/4, 5/16, 6/16, which is 3/8, 7/16, 1/2, which is 8/16, and so on. So you can see that we've reached the end of our marking of the ruler. All of the smaller marks are the same size, and they're at 1/16 of an inch interval. Let's make a measurement. How long is this rectangle? Let's take a closer look and zero in on that area, and we see a couple things. First of all, we see that it doesn't reach to the half mark between 2 and 3, so we know it's less than 2.5. It doesn't quite reach the 1/4 mark, so we know that this rectangle is less than 2 1/4 in length. But it does seem to be a little bit longer than the 1/8 mark. So it's somewhere between 1/8 and this mark here, which if we move across here, we'll see that this is the third little tick mark. Each of the tick marks is 1/16. So this is what? 1, 2, 3/16 and 1/8. Bracket the size, and again this is 2/16 and 3/16. So what we have to do is we have to identify that as 3/16 as we've done here, and then to find the actual measurement, well, we can't find out what it is exactly, right? Every measurement is an estimate, so we settle for finding the average between the two marks that we know it's between. So this is average is 1/8 and 3/16, and if we find that midpoint or average, we'll find that it's 5/32. So we would say that this rectangle is 2 5/32 in length. This is the math involved in doing that midpoint calculation. I'm not going to go through it. I leave it in the presentation for you to pause the video if you need to and take a look at that. Okay, now it's your turn. Well, let's go through these. Let's record these measurements in actually just the fractional form. So the first thing about A is you can see that it's 4 tick marks from the beginning. We recall that each tick mark is 1/16 of an inch. So this rectangle is 4/16 of an inch long. 4/16 reduces to 1/4. Or we could just look at the length of the mark. Recall that the values of 1/2, 1/4, and 3/4, and even the eighths are a bit longer than the base unit of 1/16. And we could know by the length of this tick mark that it's 1/4. This might take some practice, but it comes pretty quickly for the major marks like 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. Let's do this one. It's a bit past the 15th tick mark, so it's a bit longer than 15/16 of an inch. We'll settle for the midpoint of 15/16 and 1. 1 being the long one here, of course. And that midpoint is 31/32. So that would be our answer. 31/32 of an inch. For C, of course, the rectangle is between the 1 and 2 inch marks. You can either count the tick marks and get to 12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, making this equal to 12/16, or we would write this as 3/4. We're assuming that this mark lands right on this line here, and it appears to. Or you can notice that the rectangle line lines up with the larger tick mark between 1.5 and 2, and that means 3/4 mark, and so we get 1 3/4. Rectangle D, the rectangle is between 2 and 3 inch marks. 2 and 3. You can count the tick marks and find that the rectangle is between the 6th and 7th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This means that the length is between 2 and 6/16 and 2 and 7/16. Note that we would write 2 and 6/16 as 2 and 3/8. We always write it as a reduced fraction. You guys can do the math, but if you look at the average of those two numbers, you'll get 2 and 13/32 for rectangle D. Finally, for rectangle E, the rectangle is past the 3 inch mark. It's not quite to the first tick mark. So the length is between 3 and 3 1/16 of an inch. Again, you guys can do the math, and you'll find that the midpoint would come out to 3 1/32 of an inch. Okay? There's a fun game you can practice with at the link I'm showing right here. It's a lot of fun, and you'll find that finding the value on the ruler of a particular fractional value can be quite challenging if you're not used to doing it a lot. So I would suggest you give this game a try. It's a lot of fun.